Nice, guys. It's looking good. Holy shit. Holy fuck. Yo guys, what is up? Moxsy here in our Monster Hunter Wilds video, and today we're updating our build guide for the bow. Now, I put out a bow guide a few days ago, and since then, and I did a lot of research and a lot of more testing, and I also watched a bunch of speedrunners on doing different builds, getting different times on Arkfeld, and what I've compiled today is some strategies that I found from speedrunners and also from my own testing to compile a various amount of builds for bow that can tackle just about every situation in the game. I hope you guys enjoy the full build breakdown. Let's get right into it. Now, our first build to talk about is the Raw Dragon Piercer build. Now, this was first shown off by BuzzKong, who has the fastest kill time on Tempered Arkfeld that I could find. I was watching a lot of speedruns, and most speedrunners that were getting good times on Tempered Arkfeld were using elemental bows, but because Tempered Arkfeld doesn't take very much elemental damage, they were really focusing on attack, but they were still using elemental bows. BuzzKong was the first person that I saw to use a non-elemental bow and just focus on raw damage, and particularly using that strategy with Dragon Piercer, which can hit Arkfeld a ton of times because it's such a large monster. This is specifically a build for large monsters like your Jin Dahads, like your Arkfelds, and it's going to be focusing on doing as much damage as possible with specifically Dragon Piercer. So for this build, we're going to be using the Griefbringer Urstox bow. This is the Doshagama bow, and we're going to be using it with the Pierce Jewel, which specifically gives us more damage with our Dragon Piercer. We're also going to be using the Expert Jewel to offset some of the negative affinity, and the True Shot Jewel, which is going to give us special ammo boost, which also further boosts our Dragon Piercer. So we've got some crit and a lot of Dragon Piercer damage. Next up for the armor, we're going to be using the Guardian Fulgur Helm. This is a great helm because it's going to give us Agitator 2. And once again, we're going to be using a lot of things that boost up our crit rate because we're using a negative affinity bow. We're going to be using the Arc Vulcan chest piece with Tenderizer, and I'm using Ambush. If you want to go the heroics route, you definitely can. So for the gear for this build, we're going to be using the Griefbringer Urstox with the Pierce Jewel. This gives us more damage on our Dragon Piercer. We're going to be using special ammo boost with our as our tier 1, our True Shot. Our bow already comes with rank 1 of this, so this gives us rank 2 to our Dragon Piercer damage. And then we're also going to be using Crit Eye to offset some of that negative affinity. Next up, we're going to be using the Guardian Fulgur Helm Beta with the Ambush Jewel. For this guide, I personally did not go with Heroics. Heroics is like a strat that you can use for speedrunning to get extra damage, but you have to maintain your 35% less health. You have to dismiss your Palico. So I wanted a more casual version of that. I'll also show you the one with Heroics, but instead of using Heroics, we're going to use Ambush. You get a backstab on an enemy, and then you're going to get 15% attack damage for a while, which is great for our bow. Then we're going to be using the Arc Vulcan Beta chest piece with Tenderizer and Ambush. Then we're going to be using the Guardian Arkfeld Vambraces with Sane Physique. Sane is super great because it also gives us more affinity, and we're going to be using the 2-piece Gore set, which gives us Frenzy, and then when we overcome that Frenzy, we get 15% crit chance from Antivirus. Then we're going to be using another Tenderizer and Ambush in our Gore Waste Coil. And lastly, our Gore Greaves are going to have the Challenger for more Agitator. Agitator also gives us more crit with Physique and Growth. Note that I currently do not have a crit boost gem. I'd probably still go crit eye on this thing, but just note that none of my builds will have crit boost. I'll say when it's best, but somehow I have 89 90 hours in the game right now, and I've still yet to drop a single crit boost 3 gem, which is kind of crazy. And lastly, for the talisman on this, we're going to be using the Challenger charm so that we get more ranks of our Agitator, and every build here is going to be using the Corrupted Mantle for extra damage and affinity while it's equipped. Our next build is our Giga Elemental build. This is kind of the format that I use if I ever want to deal super high elemental damage to a monster. When you're playing bow, your best friend, by the way, is this field guide. If you look at any monster, like for example, if we look at, let's say Arkfeld. Arkfeld, it says recommended elemental attack is Dragon. But you see the fastest speed runs using ice, or anytime that they're not using Dragon Piercer, they're using ice bows. Why is that? If you actually come over to this screen, you can actually see the real elemental breakdown. My camera is blocking it right now. But the real elemental breakdown shows you the different hit zones of the monster and what elements they're susceptible to. And as we see, Arkfeld is just about susceptible equally to every element, where he doesn't take elemental damage on his wings. So you don't have to use Dragon, for example, for Arkfeld. And so one thing with bow is you can look and see different monsters have different susceptibilities to elemental damage, and the monsters that are going to be taking more elemental damage, bringing out a big elemental damage weapon, will just absolutely nuke them. So, for example, bringing Dragon Bow to Rathalos, for example. He's got a lot of these 2-star weakness zones. Same with Guardian Rathalos with Dragon. So this is our big elemental damage build. And when we start shooting and we activate our burst, you'll see one thing that's really cool is we stack up a ton of elemental damage. There's 600 ice element on our bow there once we activate our burst, with 52% crit chance and 250 attack at the moment. And that is sitting really, really nice. And that's, without our antivirus active as well. But this build stacks up a ton of elemental damage on monsters. So let's go over our gear. So we'll talk armor first, and then we'll go over weapons and stuff. There's a lot of different ways to achieve kind of the similar stats that we have. I've got a setup where we're using a Gore helmet, and then we're using New Udra Greaves. We've got a setup where we're using the Guardian Ebony helm, and then we're using 2-piece Gore. There's a lot of different ways to kind of set up and get similar stats. I found this to be the best, mainly because I really like my stamina surge, and this way we get 2 ranks of stamina surge. We don't really miss out on anything else. But one thing that we're going to be doing here is basically on every bow build, I think you go 2-piece Gore. The reason for 2-piece Gore is because then you inflict yourself with Frenzy, and Antivirus or Sanes are tier 1 decorations. Almost every piece of armor has tier 1s, so it's super easy to just get Antivirus basically for free, which is 15% crit chance, and then we can use different pieces of armor to get the other things that we need. So on this setup, we're going to get Weakness Exploit 5, Constitution 5, Burst 5, and Antivirus 5. Burst 5 only gives us plus 10 attack, but it just gives us 120 element, which is what's bringing our bow from 480 ice attack to 600. Note that this is a build that would massively benefit from the critical element decoration working. Unfortunately, it is bugged, and so that's why our decorations for our bow look like this. But just to give you an idea, this is the armor, and then these are the decorations that I've currently got on. We're basically always going to be, for normal bow play, going to be socketing the spread jewel in for the damage increase to our power shots. I've got expert here, and then frost for even more elemental damage. Our next build is going to be our full crit bow build. This is giving us 97% affinity at the moment if we're hitting weak spots. So we have like 67% base affinity, and then when we're hitting weak spots, we get another 30%. If we're hitting wounds, we have 100% guaranteed crits. This is a setup that would massively benefit from crit boost. So if you're rocking this, I would just swap the crit eye to a crit boost gem. Once again, I have not gotten any crit boost gems to drop for me, and so I would just like mainly put decorations on the weapon for crit boost, but we'll talk about that in a second. But this is our full crit bow build that just pumps a ton of damage, and while you're going to be dealing less elemental damage than the burst build, you're going to be dealing tons of crit. This is kind of the build that I would bring to anything that isn't super affected by elements or doesn't have like 2-star elemental weakness kind of type of deal. And so let's go over our equipment. So a slight change with this build, we're going to be using the Gore helmet, and then we're also swapping the Gore pants to the Dahid Shargreaves, and then we're going to be using the Challenger charm for Agitator. That's going to give us Weakness Exploit 5, Constitution 5, Agitator 5, Antivirus 3, Stamina Surge 2, Evade Window, and Coalescence. These are the jewels that we're rocking in all of our gear. Once again, a bunch of Physique Sane Tenderizers, and then in our bow, I've currently got Spread, Expert, and Dragon. If I had crit boost gems, I would be using Spread, and then probably 2 crit burst things here, crit boost, just to get as much crit damage as possible. Honestly, just once again, I don't have those, unfortunately, so that's what I'm currently rocking. You could also swap the Dragon out just for an attack gem to scale up even more attack damage on this. Our next bow build is our full just raw attack, like aggressive shotgun bow. This is a really hard-hitting bow build that uses no elemental damage, doesn't really focus crit, but just boosts up our raw damage a whole ton. As you can see, that burst that we just did was 2,000 damage. If we just like activate our counterattack here and then go in, that our burst there did for 3 attacks 813 damage. And this is just raw attack damage with attack boost, adrenaline rush, constitution, weakness exploit, stamina surge, antivirus, and flinch free, with a raw bow that has a bunch of base raw to really give us a ton of damage. But this is kind of like a close range build. You don't need to use the Urstogs. You can technically use like any bow. If you could get a Artian bow that rolls a ton of if it rolls a ton of attack, you could just use an Artian as well and then not have to deal with the negative affinity. But a very cool bow build. I haven't really seen anyone doing these kind of builds, but this is our like just pure attack build with Adrenaline Rush 5, Constitution 5, Weakness Exploit 4, Stamina Surge 3, Antivirus 3, Attack Boost 4, and Spread, and then we've got a little bit more attack. You could technically get to attack boost 5 here as well. But the whole idea with this is like, hey, you just want to have a build that you don't need to constantly change for different monsters. You just go in, take one bow build that just does a ton of raw damage, and don't really need to worry about too much about like monsters' elemental affinities and not. Matching elements is definitely the way to go, but if you're looking for kind of just a raw damage build, I think this one is honestly pretty sick. Now, the last thing to talk about with our bow builds is obviously the Artian weapons. Artian weapons are not the best in slot for every weapon. They do have some limitations, such as, for example, the best gun lance right now is the like Arkveld gun lance. But for bows, most of the time, your Artian bows are going to be your strongest. Specifically for building an Artian bow, I do recommend going for at least 2 affinities, and you want to match all 3 elements, ideally. So if we were going to be building a fire bow here, we could go fire, fire, and then fire to get 20% affinity. I personally have been going 2 affinities and 1 attacks on my current weapons because, as I showed on some setups, we're basically getting to 100% crit chance. And so there are like other areas that we can get like that much crit chance. And then on your actual reinforcements, on your Artian bows, I think getting elemental damage for the most part is one of the best things you could possibly hit. Getting affinity is nice. Getting attack is nice if you plan on doing an attack build on your bow. Like, for example, if you're building a bow specifically for Arcfeld, hitting attack is great. But for like most other things, you're going to want like elemental and affinity boost. Here is my ice bow that we're using in our Giga Elemental build. That's rolled 4 different elemental boosts. I would have loved for this attack boost to be affinity, but you can get some crazy rolls here. This was mine that rolled my thunder bow that we have 100% crit chance on because it rolled 3 different affinity boosts, an elemental boost, and an attack boost. But yeah, if you're really trying to min-max on your Artian weapons, you're really looking for high element and affinity for your elemental builds, and then like attack based and affinity for your non-elemental builds. Guys, it's going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you are having a good time in Monster Hunter Wilds. I've sunk a crazy amount of time into this game, and I can't get enough. I do wish that there was like spread out rewards, so I wasn't basically just killing Arcfeld at endgame, but that's for another video. I will catch you all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.